So today we're going to be watching Puppy Playtime the movie. Let's go.
Poppy Playtime has one of the most complex stories out there, with hours of lore spanning across games, spin-offs, books, ARGs, and more. But today, I've put every single piece of the story we have gotten so far all together to create my complete Poppy Playtime timeline. Disclaimer, this timeline is my opinion of the Poppy Playtime story based on all the lore we've gotten so far, but I hope you guys enjoy this movie-length video. Our
1930s.
tale starts in the year
1930s.
1930 with a man named Elliot Ludwig. Elliot was your average everyday family man with a wife and a daughter living a happy life. But Elliot, an inventor at heart obsessed with creating things, had an idea. He wanted to create his very own toy factory that would produce and provide toys for millions of children around the world, leading to him founding Playtime Co., where from here, Elliot went to work, spending hours upon hours working at the factory, trying to start up the brand and get it on its feet. But while trying to serve families around the world, he started to forget his own, not being able to be at home as much with his wife and daughter due to the long, grueling hours the factory demanded, often leaving his house during early hours of the morning and returning at late hours in the night, being seen as creepy by his neighbors even. And soon enough, his wife could no longer take it, packing up and leaving him and his daughter during his most trying times. Elliot Ludwig
1950s.
had spent the last 2 decades trying to create products to no real avail. Nothing really seemed to stick with the public. That is until the year 1950, when Elliot would create the product that would change his entire
Oh,
life.
and
Poppy
this
Playtime.
could be a
Poppy
movie or
Playtime
not,
was a
so
baby
the
doll
film might
toy,
die
which was a
soon.
super common
Just
thing
be
in the
warned. So we're
1950s.
gonna make a
But
part 2
Elliot
soon.
was extra special because she, unlike the rest, could
This
seemingly
was
talk back and forth with children, making
in
her feel almost
5.99.
lifelike.
I'm a real girl, just like you.
Along with her hair being scented like poppy flowers, a soothing scent that would calm down the children that played with it. This release would explode the company and was extremely successful, finally giving Elliot everything he ever wanted. His toys were now quickly in the hands of millions of children, and now that his
Backup
company
song.
was growing, he was able to hire new employees, with the first notable one being Thomas Clark, hired in 1955, while also creating the Grab Pack at some point, a backpack with retractable hands at the sides that employees could use to reach faraway items at ease to help with efficiency. And furthermore, Elliot used his success to start doing factory tours, allowing families to visit the factory and see how everything was being created, expanding the company's growth and brand more, along with working on new products like the Doughy Dough, a Play-Doh type toy led by the mascot Doughy the Dough Man, that was another massive success, propelling the company more. Although, despite all of this success, at some point during this period, Elliot Ludwig's daughter would tragically pass away. And just like that, Elliot's family that inspired him to provide toys for millions of others was now gone, putting him into a deep, deep depression. However, Elliot wasn't just going to stop there. If the factory is what dragged his family away, then maybe it's what could bring it back together. He had thousands of these lifelike Poppy dolls laying around, so being an inventor, he wondered if he could use one of them as a new shell for his daughter and attempt to revive her himself. It was a Hail Mary, to say the least, but it was worth a try. And after experimenting on her with the slim but non-zero chance to save her life, magically it worked. Perfectly, as a matter of fact. His daughter was back as a living and breathing Poppy doll. She could move, think, talk, and feel. Elliot's daughter was revived, but this situation scarred him deeply, as he realized he hadn't been spending any time with his daughter he almost just lost while working 24/7. So instead, he would develop himself a new home inside of the factory where they both lived, right across from his office, allowing him to spend more time with her during the busy hours and still have that semblance of the family life he lost when originally starting the company.
1960s.
Playtime Co. was doing better than ever, riding off of Poppy Playtime's success, and naturally, Elliot Ludwig expanded the company further by creating the Make a Friend machine in 1960, which was an interactive machine used for tours where children could create another new toy, Catbee, along with more new products like Broadly Dinosaur in 1961 and Boxy Boo in 1966, presumably along toys to keep expanding the company's growth. But Elliot, again, was still a family man and wanted to help even more children around the world
Good
outside
huggy
of just giving them
shits.
toys. And at an unknown point during this success, he would create the Young Geniuses program, a program where many gifted children around the world would be hand-selected by Elliot Ludwig after applying to come to the Playtime Co. factory and actually learn how the toys are produced through their factories and innovation labs, with the hope that eventually when they grow up, they would take over the company as Elliot and his many colleagues aged away. Many children would be selected for this program, like Bruno White, who will be important later, but the most special one of them all was a boy named Harley Sawyer, an intentionally isolated child with no interest for friendships or cares for others, with a rough life back at home, but despite this was an extremely intelligent and focused mind, obsessed with the scientific process. When selected for the Young Geniuses program, he saw how dedicated Elliot Ludwig and Playtime Co. was for innovation, which enlightened him further, giving him purpose and determination he never had before. Joining the program and getting to work on these creations with Elliot finally made the troubled young boy happy. However, there was a discipline issue. While Harley cared a ton about progress and innovation, his isolation and lack of friendships had turned him into a cynic. He didn't care about trying to make the children happy or benefiting humanity. He just wanted to see how far he could go with his creations, which went completely against Elliot Ludwig's ethics, causing them to argue against each other, where after a little while, despite him being one of the smartest children in the entire program, he unfortunately was removed by Elliot. Harley, following this, was enraged, believing Elliot was a backstabber after inviting him in the first place just to get rid of him, but for now, he was gone. In 1972, Elliot would sign with the company Warmbach Construction to build new areas of the factory. For instance, a theater where tour visitors could watch shows acted and based on the Playtime Co. characters, with one of the main mascots of the area being Boxy Boo, among many other sectors of Playtime Co. However, a few years later, in 1976, after decades of company growth, Elliot wanted to do something even bigger to further his vision of helping and providing enjoyment to children around the world. He had brought toys and opportunities to millions of families, but he also wanted to help the many others without families, leading to him creating the Playtime Co. Orphanage Program, a program ran by Elliot that specialized in
So
providing
this is how
homes
to
and
make
love to
the
millions of
smiling
children
critters.
who were orphaned with no parents. And in order to house all these children, he would have Warnbach build Playcare, their in-house orphanage, where after a tram ride into a dome, they were met with a city-like structure with homes, schools, counselors' offices, play areas, and a store full of toys. It was everything a child would ever want while waiting to be adopted. Around this time, more toys were also created, like Yarnaby, who was a part of a wildlife conservation campaign to save animals, and Candy Cat, a gumball machine and dispenser. However, deep within the background of this success, while all of this was going on, Elliot Ludwig began to wonder about how he was able to create such a perfect doll in Poppy Playtime decades past, and if
It's
he
been
could
so
reproduce
long.
the results
I
again.
forgot
Since if he
about
could figure out the secret to literal resurrection, he could not only entertain children, he could save their lives in the same way he did his daughter. The only thing he really knew about her was that she was a doll scented like poppies. So he began to experiment, creating a poppy gel formula to attempt to resurrect other small animals like rats, things that were ultimately unsuccessful but gave him promise to keep working, while also hiring other new employees like Stella Graver to manage Playcare, Eddie Ritterman, the head of research, Leith Pierre, the head of innovation, and Jimmy Roth, the head of marketing, to expand the toy side of the company further.
1980s. They were almost
In the early 1980s, Playtime Co. was still large, but it needed another big product to keep their name in the spotlight. They had created a ton of new toys to fill up the company's successful lineup, but it wasn't until the year 1984 when they would come up with the
I'm almost
company's
4 years
biggest
old.
life-changing idea yet, Huggy Wuggy, a furry stuffed animal toy that was extremely cute, equipped with Velcro hands that stuck together, as their market research showed anxious children were called by a toy that could hug them back. They would release this toy to an absolute smashing success, becoming immediately the biggest toy Playtime Co. had ever produced, taking the place as the unofficial mascot of the entire company. Then, in 1985, they would expand on
I'm
the
on
success even
5.
more by
Mm-hmm.
creating a female counterpart to Huggy, this time who was
On
pink
November
and had
12th.
eyelashes, Kissy and Missy, along with even smaller, more affordable Huggy
What the
Wuggies,
heck?
the Mini Huggies. These toys, 50 years after Playtime Co.'s opening, skyrocketed the company into the biggest it's ever been, and at this point, it seems like Playtime Co. would never fail. However, an issue that quickly arose was Elliot Ludwig's age.
Oh,
Elliot
stop
had been
touching.
working on the factory for the entire 50-year history, and as time began to pass, he started to give more and more power to one of the employees he hired during his time, Leith Pierre, the head of innovation. An arrogant and somewhat greedy businessman known to overwork his employees and threaten to fire them if they didn't do a good job, but was otherwise actually very well liked by Elliot, as he made it a key point to stay true to Elliot's vision as he took on more roles at Playtime Co., culminating in the late 1980s, where Elliot Ludwig
So I
would
want to
finally
review what we're
pass
doing
away, leaving
1980.
Leith
When
Pierre
was
to take full
1980?
control of the company. Upon exploring what Elliot had left behind, he was shocked to see that behind closed doors there was Poppy. The real, living, and breathing Poppy, something nobody had ever seen in the factory before. While over in his office, the documents of him trying to use Poppy gel to revive rats were found. These things Leith and his team began to study, but over on the toy side, he had also left one more thing: plans for the Smiling Critters, a set of 8 different Care Bear inspired plushes, all with their very own personalities, led by Dog Day, and included others like Bobby Bear Hug and Hoppy Hopscotch that would be sold as plushes and would spit
Hoppy
out their own
hopscotch smells
unique
like
scents
peppermint.
based upon their personalities. Like Bobby,
Hmm.
who is a character focused on love, emitting a rose scent, for instance. This was Playtime Co.'s most ambitious
There's a chicken.
toy
Chicken
line
smells
yet
like.
off the back of the recent
Maybe
Huggy
chicken.
success.
What?
And Leith, being the
Chicken nuggets.
businessman he was, loved this idea and
I think the one
sank
got taste and
absolutely
not
all
a
the money
smell.
he could into the line, creating tons of the plushies to sell and even producing an entire cartoon to build the brand further. But he also had one more trick under his sleeve, specifically with the last smiling critter, Catnap, who was the critter all about getting enough
Lavender.
sleep, with his plush scent
Is that the
originally
thing?
being lavender. However, after seeing what Elliot was doing with all the Poppy Playtime flower stuff and the success of her Poppy scent as a toy back in 1950, Leith and his team would instead create a new gas for Catnap, this time made from the Poppy flowers, being a dark, thick red that, when administered and tested, had extremely strong sleeping properties, knocking people out completely like how Catnap would in the show, while also having notable adverse effects like night terrors and nightmares. Regardless, during production, employees noticed the red smoke coming from the plushes, but chose to send them out anyway, leading up to 1989, where the plushes
Mom
and
was
the
not your
cartoon would
age.
finally
Teacher.
release, where things went horribly. The show itself was very unpopular. Children were extremely scared of Catnap, who was completely silent and spewed the intimidating gas to the critters in a terrifyingly uncanny way, making the show almost immediately a failure. But perhaps most horrifying of all was the plushes themselves,
Stop touching my pocket.
specifically Catnaps, as after the plushes went out to stores, Playtime Co. would instantly fall under extreme controversy. Children began to have horrifying nightmares after getting the Catnap plush and inhaling said red gas, as news articles and television urged parents to not let their children near the Catnap plush or any of these smiling critters for that matter, destroying the company's entire reputation overnight. Playtime Co. eventually ended up recalling the Catnap plush completely while trying to save the rest of the line and creating new alternate lines like the Nightmare Critters, but it was no use. Nobody wanted to step anywhere near the critters anymore, and just like that, with the snap of a finger, the factory Elliot Ludwig had produced was now in a major depression. The millions of dollars invested were wasted, the Smiling Critters were a failure, and the company seems like it was on a one-way spiral out of existence.